hitting the record button so we can share this. Welcome, I'm Edwin Rutsch, Director of the Center for Building a Culture of Empathy, and we're here at our second Enable Translation. Yeah, got that. This is our second ListenFirst Empathy Circle, so I want to welcome you to this. We're going to be going for about 2 hours. And our intention today is to talk about our experience in the National Week of Conversation. Many of you have held dialogues, conversations during the week or attended some, so we want to have a space to talk about your experience with that. Our Center for Building a Culture of Empathy held 5 events. We held 2 with 2 interfaith dialogues and 2 what we call Talk with the Cops, and then 1 on building the empathy movement. So to begin with, maybe Graham, do you want to just say a few words about ListenFirst Coalition?
Absolutely. So this year was our 5th annual National Week of Conversation. ListenFirst Project helped to organize and mobilize partners around the first annual event in 2018. And it has only grown since then, with this year having over 200 partner organizations sign on to promote and host events. So ListenFirst Project is a 501c3. We operate as the backbone organization, the supporting organization for the collective impact network that we call the ListenFirst Coalition, which is the 450 or so organizations that do bridging work. I see several people on here that are affiliated with organizations that are part of that. So thank you for all you do. And we're just pleased to have Edwin lead you all through an empathy circle to share out your experiences exclusively about National Week of Conversation, what was working in terms of recruitment, what are you thinking in terms of learnings that you can apply for events, not only for National Week of Conversation, but otherwise. And so I'm actually popping off because I can't commit for the full 2 hours. Having other meetings scheduled for today, but I'm looking forward with anticipation hearing from Edwin, as well as watching the recording when this is finished.
Okay, thanks, Graham. So let me just review the intention again. We're going to talk about the experience in National Week of Conversation. We want to experience and learn the practice of the empathy circle. It's a core practice that we do in small breakout rooms. We also want to build the connections between different ListenFirst members so that you can connect in these small groups and get to meet each other and hopefully build projects together, and to come up with ideas for implementing in the community. And I think we're small enough that we could do a really short introduction of each of us. I'm going to put this in like a 30 seconds introduction here. Share your name, your location, your organization, and the name of any events that you held or attended. So I'll start with Virginia. You want to? Sure.
Thanks, Edwin. Thanks for having this. My organization is the Institute for Global Leadership. I've been working 30 years in the United Nations. Now I'm focused on supporting the United States to realize its full potential. We had America's Soul Community to support Human HR 6843, which is Building Civic Bridges Act. We're fully committed to that act, and we're working with our congressmen in our state to make sure that happens, as well as op-ed pieces.
Okay, thanks, Virginia. Cambria.
Hi, everyone. My name is Cambria, and I work for several organizations in the bridging space, including CHP, Citizen Connect, Living Room Conversations, and ListenFirst Project. I am based in Santa Monica, and I did not host or attend an event, but I was one of the main recruitment people for America Talks and National Week of Conversations on that team. So I'm really excited to learn about other people's experience and how we can take those experiences into opportunities to grow your organizations going forward.
Great, thanks. Eric?
I'm Eric Olson, and I'm in Connecticut, Wilton, Connecticut. I'm with Common Ground Committee. I'm one of the co-founders of Common Ground Committee. And we hosted an event in conjunction with Bridge Alliance on the 24th, is that right? Yes, with Chris Wallace and Jonathan Carl on the role of media in polarization. I hope you all attended. And it was, I would say, a very successful event. I'll talk more about it later, but there were some kind of interesting little stories to tell about it, which if I get a chance, I'll share later. And happy to be here.
Cheryl, thanks.
Yeah, thank you. It was a great event, Eric. Hi, my name is Cheryl Gravy. I'm with the National Institute for Civil Discourse. I also wear a hat as a volunteer with the League of Women Voters and a longtime former staffer there. And we had an event on the 23rd, which featured the Peter Adams from the News Literacy Project. And so we were talking about information, misinformation, and so shared some examples and tools for helping people understand, reflect, pause, and not be a disinformation sharer themselves. So pleased to be here too.
Thanks. Sophia?
Hello, everyone. I am Sophie. I'm based in Buenos Aires, and I support all the team from TV Health Project. I'm really happy to be here and to know your experience. I worked during the National Week of Conversation. I work as a support to promote the events that were happening, and also I supported America Talks schema analysis tool. So it's great to know your experiences and to get to know you all.
Thanks. Marion?
Hi, I'm Reverend Marion Edmonds Allen. I'm with Parity and Blessed by Difference and Holy Dialogues. And we had a Holy Dialogue event and talked around the LGBT and faith divide. And what we do is we model curiosity and compassion and welcoming all perspectives.
Thanks. Eve?
Thank you. I'm Eve Sullivan in Cambridge, Mass. I'm a parenting educator, and Parents Forum, the program I founded with National Parents Union, hosted a discussion of parenting education on Tuesday evening with parenting educator, pediatrician, and some National Parents Union activists. I wish I could say that it was something other than a test case. I thought it went well, but the day after I found out that some of our messaging was misperceived. So there's some follow-up in view, and I look forward to getting some advice and perspective from people here today. Thank you.
Thank you. Kristen?
Hi, Kristen Hansen. I'm with Civic Health Project. I've been involved with National Week of Conversation for a few years and America Talks for a couple of years. And I was just eager to hear perspectives of coalition members as to how it went to host events during NWOC.
Great. Henry?
Henry McHenry, in the country outside Charlottesville. I'm the founder of Meetings of Opposites. We had an online introduction to Meetings of Opposites, which is a sequence of 2.5-hour workshops between pairs. It was a very successful introduction. So I'm looking forward to doing it again.
Okay, Kara, I just posted in the question in the chat, name, location, organization, event you held. If you want to introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Kara. I am an executive coach and I use empathy in a lot of my practices. Most recently, I was able to do it with a management, just a couple of managers to get their communication back up and running so that they're back on the same page. It's the soft skill that has hard impacts and I love it.
Okay, thanks. Susan? There you are.
Yeah, hi, I'm Susan Muller and I'm with Mainstream Nation, and we had a great event on the 26th called No Credible Third Party in 2024, Look into Media by the People. So we were really pleased with the turnout that we got and the conversation that ensued on one of our national shows that are in development called President-Elect. So unfortunately, I have a hard stop at 2 o'clock and was hoping I could just stay on for an hour. So I might just listen in, but then I'm gonna have to back out. So whenever that time happens, let me know.
Okay.
But
thanks. Valerie?
Yeah, hi, I'm Valerie Mella and I'm from New Westminster, British Columbia, Canada, and I am part of the empathy circles that Edwin puts on, and I participated in the events that were put on there, and I am just really enthusiastic to learn more about creating more conversation and specifically dialogue and empathy. Thank you.
Thanks. Dwayne?
Hi, my name is Dwayne Hearn. I live in Las Vegas, Nevada. First and foremost, all the activities that I engage in are focused on my own personal growth and development. I'm a part of, is it okay to say Edwin's group? I'm an empathy circle facilitator. I think I've participated in probably 50 empathy circles over the last few months. I also participated in the Police to Peace empathy circles, and I'm looking forward to participating in more empathy circles, cafes, and contributing to the conversation. In fact, I just want to mention one quick thing. I actually have an opportunity to facilitate an empathy circle, and my sister teaches at Johns Hopkins University in the Museum Studies graduate program. I'm going to facilitate an empathy circle in her class on Wednesday of this week. So nice to meet you all.
Thanks. Bill?
My name is Bill Filler. I'm a retired special education teacher. In my job, I learned the importance of listening and really hearing. I've been working with Edwin in the Empathy tent for about 5 years, and I'm in the San Francisco Bay Area. Thanks.
Thanks. Larry?
Hi, I'm Larry. I'm a retired occupational therapist. I live in Florida, and I'm also with Edwin's Empathy Circle facilitator team. Thank you.
Okay, is there anyone that didn't speak? Check in. Okay, so what we're going to do next is go into the empathy circle process. We want to explain to you how the process works. Is there anyone who's not familiar with the practice? I just want to see if we, okay, 1, 2, okay, well, I have a 6-minute video that I can show then on how to take part in the practice. I'd also put in the link to the PDF. I'll put that in again. And that's the instruction, but this little video will just explain the process, because we'll be going into breakout rooms of about 5 or so people. But first, here is the instructions for how to do the empathy circle process. Director of the Center for Building a Culture of Empathy. I'd like to welcome you to this short presentation on how to take part in a basic empathy circle. So next, let's look at the step-by-step how to take part. An empathy circle starts with 2 to 7 participants. Here on the screen, we have 4 participants, which I find is an ideal number. There are 4 basic roles, and the roles rotate among the participants as the empathy circle unfolds. 1, the speaker is the first person to speak. 2 is active listener who actively listens to the speaker. There's the silent listeners, they quietly observe and witness. And the facilitator who organizes, schedules, and hosts the circle. They also do the timekeeping, and they have some experience with the process and help keep participants in the process. However, everyone has the responsibility to hold the process and the practice. So to begin with, the facilitator will start the empathy circle. They welcome the participants. They lead introductions if the participants don't know each other. The facilitator invites participants to give short introductions, for example, their name, where they're from, and something personal about themselves. The facilitator then reviews the empathy circle process to remind everyone how it works. They announce the discussion topic, if there is one. Even if there is a topic, you can always talk about what is alive for you. That is what is on your mind in the moment. And 5, they set the speaker time limits, perhaps 5 minutes, for example. And the facilitator then asks who would like to start to be the first speaker. So at that point, the participant volunteers to be the first speaker. As speaker, you select who will be your active listener, and you can select anyone that you want. You speak about the topic given or whatever is alive for you. And so you'll speak a bit until you have maybe expressed an idea or two, and then you want to pause to give the active listener a chance to recap what they understand that you are saying and feeling. If you say too much, the listener may have difficulty in reflecting it. As the active listener, you are listening to the speaker to get an understanding of what they're saying and what is important to them. You are giving them your full attention as a supportive companion on their inner journey and exploration. When the speaker pauses, you recap your understanding of what they said and how they feel by reflecting the essence of that in your own words. You can summarize, paraphrase, or even say the speaker's words back to them. Even though you may have a strong impulse to respond with your own ideas, judgments, analysis, advice, and sympathy, or even questions, resist the impulse to do so because these common responses block the speaker from moving along their internal journey. You'll be able to say whatever you want when it is your turn to be the speaker. If you don't reflect the understanding to the speaker's satisfaction, they can always say it again. Then as speaker, you check, do you feel understood to your satisfaction? If you do not feel understood, you can say it again, perhaps in different words. If you do feel understood, continue sharing. Again, after speaking a bit, pause to give your active listener a chance to recap their understanding of what you said. As the active listener, you again share your understanding of what the speaker said and meant. The cycle of speaking and reflecting continues until you, as the speaker, do not have anything else you'd like to say, or until you get a signal from the timekeeper. If you get a signal from the timekeeper, then finish up what you're saying in a sentence or two. After you get a final reflection, you can end your turn by saying something like, "I feel fully heard," or something like that to indicate you are done with your speaking turn. At that point, the roles then rotate. The active listener becomes the speaker. The person they select becomes the new active listener. For everyone having equal time, it is good to select someone that hasn't spoken lately, but it is your choice. The others in the circle become the silent listeners. This process of taking turns in speaking and active listening continues for whatever time is allotted for the empathy circle. And this was just a very short introduction. The best way to learn the practice is taking part and doing it. There is more in-depth material on taking part in an empathy circle and facilitating one at empathyycircle.com. Thank you for listening. Okay, so I've created 3 groups, and here's the question, just as a reminder. You can always talk about whatever's on your mind. One group, so Dwayne will facilitate the first group, or there he is. The first group is going to be a larger group, because I think Graham and Kristen said they had to leave earlier. And then Bill will facilitate one. Can you record too, Bill, in your group, just so that we can kind of harvest the insights? And Larry will facilitate the other. Are you able to record, Larry? Does that work for you? Okay. So we're ready to go into the groups. We're going to go for about an hour and 15 minutes, and we'll come back and do a little debrief. So I think we're all set to go. See you in the breakout rooms. And you're facilitating, Dwayne?
Okay.
I'm recording.
Edwin, I see I'm not assigned and somehow I was made a co-host.
Oh, this is the unassigned are staying in this room. This is this group is staying in the weight room. If somebody drops out, they might be coming back through this room, and I'll assign them back into a room. But we're using the weight room here as a group.
Okay.
Okay. I'd like to welcome everybody to our empathy circle. If we could just do a really quick introduction and say where you're located, take about 30 seconds. Would you like to start, Kara?
Yes. Hi, I'm Kara. I'm up here in the Pacific Northwest on the desert side of Washington State. I'm excited to see you all.
Thank you. Cambria.
Hi, everyone. My name is Cambria, and I'm based in Los Angeles, California.
Okay. Kristen.
Hello, Kristen Hansen. I'm in Menlo Park, California.
Okay. Cheryl.
I am Cheryl Gravy, and I'm in the Washington, D.C. area in Bowie, Maryland.
Thank you. Edwin.
Edwin Rutsch in El Cerrito, which is near Berkeley, San Francisco Bay Area.
Hi, and my name is Dwayne Hearn. I'm located in Las Vegas, Nevada, but like most of you, I'm from California, from Los Angeles, California. So I'm not going to go through the how-to because we just saw a 6-minute video. And so I think, as Edwin says at the end of the video, the best way to experience this is to actually engage in the practice. So I'm going to be the first listener. And I was wondering, Kara, if you'd like to be the first speaker.
I would be happy to be your speaker.
And just one quick second, as a reminder, if you haven't seen the question in the chat, the question or topic is, how was your experience with National Week of Conversation? Or you can, as always, speak about what's ever alive for you today. So forgive me, Kara. I'm going to also be the timer, and so you'll hear my alarm go off when you're, I believe it's 4 minutes, Edwin? 5 minutes, when your 5 minutes is up. So give me 1 second, Kara, and I'm ready to go.
Okay. How was my experience with National Week of Conversation in 2022? Well, I didn't get to go participate with any of the things, but I did manage to bring conversation into my day-to-day life and have some. Well, the nice part about empathy is when you have to have hard conversations, they stop being so hard. I'll pause there.
Thank you, Kara. I understand that you didn't have an opportunity to participate in the activities, but you were able to share this experience in conversation at home. And you also iterated the fact that for you that hard conversations are actually hard.
Are not hard with
Not
empathy,
hard,
which is the nice part. The thing I have noticed, so I do a whole bunch of emotional intelligence work. I'm certified through Genos, which is an emotional intelligence company. And empathy being one of the skills is actually one of the productive states of being emotionally intelligent, right? I'll pause there. That was a lot of information.
Okay. You work with a company, and excuse me, hard conversations are easy when with empathy. And you do a lot of work with emotional intelligence. You work for a company called Geno, and from there, I missed the last part.
Was a whole lot of information. So essentially, I do a lot of work with emotional intelligence, and empathy is considered one of the productive states of being emotionally intelligent. If you're aware of your emotions, empathy is one of those positive things that comes from that. And so through this last week, I was able to use empathy to get people to hear themselves, which is kind of what this circle does. I'll pause again.
Okay. Empathy is one of the important elements of emotional intelligence. And so you had an opportunity to do some work recently with emotional intelligence work and around empathy. And you did a circle, and so you're able to share some of this style of communication with the people you're working with.
Yeah, so it allows you to hear yourself and become aware of the things you are feeling without OPE, other people's expectations put on top of you.
The empathy circle process really allows a person to really hear what they're saying without other people's expectations being read into the process.
Yeah, and how relieving is that? So this week I was able to, even though I didn't get to go do any of the stuff at home and at work, I was able to bring that practice in and allow people to engage themselves in their own thought process. And I just find it so magical.
Even though you didn't have an opportunity to participate in the actual scheduled events, you were able to bring this into your work and to have that same experience that this process creates, and you really enjoyed that experience.
I do. And the people I got to do it with really did. So it's not like, knowledge is not transformation. You don't sit in this circle and come out of it like, oh my God, my life is completely different. But yet also you do.
It's interesting that the people in the process, of course, also enjoyed this experience. And it's not like, after you go through this experience, you have this moment and say, oh, my life is completely transformed. But actually, it's possible that it is.
And it is, yeah. So one of my favorite stories of this week is one of my managers has recently been put on an action plan. Ooh, nobody likes that. But one of the things we were able to do is kind of go through what it was he's been feeling, like all of the anxieties and the frustrations. And then when he heard himself say it, he recognized it mirrored in his team. And he had this moment of like, whoa, so if I show up, maybe they'll show up. That's my 10.
I'm going to do my best to capture that. You had one of your managers was actually put on an action plan, and that seems that it's probably not a good thing, and it's a challenging experience for him. But the interesting thing is that when he went through this process, it was able to provide him with a greater awareness of what might be happening with the people who are around him and how his behavior is impacting him, and it turned out to be a positive learning experience. My words, excuse me.
No, I feel perfectly heard. Thank you.
Thank you for allowing me to listen to you. And so now I become the speaker, and I was wondering, Cheryl, would you like to be my listener?
Sure, yes.
Okay, thank you. And wow, for a moment there, I was reminded of how challenging it is sometimes to facilitate time and also to be a good reflective listener.
Yeah, that's a lot to juggle.
Oh, should I start now?
Yes.
Sorry. Yes. So what I heard, Dwayne, thank you for letting me listen to you. And what I heard is it is a lot to juggle, both timing, facilitation, and then sharing your own story.
Yeah, especially the listening part. It's interesting. I participated in 2 of the events last week, the Peace to Police events, primarily as a facilitator, but I was also very actively participating.
So you were participating in 2 events last week for National Week of Conversation. One was Peace the Police, I think I heard you say.
Yes.
And you were actively also participating. In addition to facilitating, you were fully present in participation.
Yes. And for me, I really enjoyed the experience. I think these types of experience are incredibly important, and it's an opportunity for community building.
So you really enjoyed it fully, and you think it's a good experience to help do community building.
And one of the really important things that takes place is it's an opportunity for personal growth and development, growth and development. And really, that's the key element of community building.
Yes. So having this opportunity of personal growth and development is one of the fundamental building blocks of community building.
And I think it's really important that there are more opportunities for us, for people like me, to have a chance to learn more about ourselves so that we can participate and contribute to the larger conversations.
Yeah. So I hear that you wish there were more opportunities for these kind of experiences so that we not only do community building, but we learn about ourselves in the process. Is that right?
Yes. And that's why I got involved with Edwin's group, with the Empathy Circle movement, because I also believe that in order to bring about positive change in the world, I need to be a participant.
Yeah. One of the things that called you into this movement was that you thought it was important, these kind of experiences were important to help build that kind of sense of community and that kind of movement and your role in it.
Yeah, I think it's easy to sit back and to critique people and to say what other people need to do. But I think the challenging thing and the important thing is to actually get involved and put the work in to really have an opportunity to contribute to changing things.
Yeah. So yeah, it's easy to sit back and criticize others, but the important thing to you was to really get involved in being part of the change. And yeah.
one of the things I like most about being a part of Edwin's group, being a part of the empathy movement, is there was an opportunity for me to receive additional training. And I like the fact that there's facilitation training. We're starting a new one next week on the 9th, and the training's free, and it's a great opportunity to continue my growth, so I can hopefully make a larger contribution moving forward. That's my time, and thank you for listening to me.
Yeah, thank you for sharing.
And of course.
Okay, so now I choose a person to listen.
Yes.
Okay.
And I would recommend choosing someone that hasn't gone yet. So
thank you. All right. How about Cambria?
I would love to listen to you.
Okay, thank you.
She has such a nice voice, doesn't she? So
She has a
soothing.
beautiful, calming, soothing.
Cheryl, Cheryl, you're the voice of empathy.
You are the one with the calming
voice. I was thinking of Cambria.
I like Cambria's
Thank
voice
you.
fine too, but come on.
at an attempt at regaining some semblance of control.
Yeah.
Cheryl,
you.
would you like to go next?
Yeah, thank you. I think, let's see, my experience, how was my experience of the National Week of Conversation? Since I was on the very first one about 5 years ago, the little team that was working together, I was filled with both a sense of pride, the growth, and curiosity about more. And I'm learning through the circle, short, small. That's helpful. Thank you.
So what I heard was you were a part of the initial team around 5 years ago. And so by participating again this year, you were both filled with pride, with seeing the growth, and also curiosity to kind of see what happens, how everyone's experience was and what happens next.
Yes, yes. And I think specifically for the event that I helped facilitate, I was nervous. Would people show up? And we had about 150, so that was pretty good. And so people did show up. So a little bit of remembering that people want this, what we are offering.
So for the event that you specifically helped facilitate, you were a little nervous to see if people were going to show up, and you had around 150 show up. And it was a good reminder to remember, people did show up, but also that people need and want this work right now.
Yes, yes. And I listened to another one where media people were talking kind of about their role and responsibilities in this divided landscape. And I was heartened by the way they showed up, which might be different than what I see kind of coming out on TV or radio, social.
I apologize if you can hear construction going on outside in the backdrop, because I am fully listening to you. And I wanted to say that you participated in another event that you listened to that was predominantly about media personalities talking about the role that they have during this time. And you were heartened by that conversation because it's different than what you may see on a day-to-day in terms of the media and how they were speaking at this event.
Yes. And I honestly, urgently, and deeply wished that the voices that I heard from them in the session were what would show up for the American public. I was like, oh, urgent. I want that. Come on.
So you urgently want to see the types of messages and language that were being communicated in this session on media today, and how that is that you want to see that.
Yes, yes. And then I was supportive of another event that was happening during the week of conversation, which was about free speech. And it had also another national journalist on the panel and a racial equity person on free speech and a professor. And one of the things that struck me out of that was not only how important free speech is, but also the responsibility we have as speakers and listeners.
So one of the other events that you were supportive of was an event around free speech that had a media person and a racial equity person and a professor. And one of the things that came out of that for you, in addition to talking about free speech, was the role that we have when we use our free speech.
Yeah. And it strikes me as I think about our democracy and how fragile it is. And I put it next to what we see in the Ukraine and a lot of civic courage or courage for your country over whatever politics. That civic courage, where do we find that rising? I mean, I know it is, but harnessing it, elevating it, cherishing it in this country.
And so to wrap up what you were talking about, it was taking away from the National Week of Conversation and the events you were in, that form of civic courage. And when we look at our democracy and how fragile it is, and we look at places around the world, like what's going on with Ukraine, it's that courage and finding out, yes, we have these things going on, but how do we rise with our civic courage, and how meaningful that was for you?
Yeah, yeah. And I think that's the piece of hope that carries me forward in times that look sometimes very challenging. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for sharing. I believe that I go next, so I will ask Kristen, are you willing to be my active listener?
Yep.
So for this National Week of Conversation, I was not able to participate in any events, but I was involved in the recruitment efforts to bring other people to events for the organizations that were in the space.
So you were pretty busy and you weren't able to attend, but you were very busy and focused on recruitment.
Definitely. And for me, one of the things that's incredibly exciting is that this year we have a place like Citizen Connect, where there is a platform where you can see the movement and events that are happening.
Yeah, one of the exciting things about this year is that we've brought Citizen Connect to fruition. And so there's a platform that provides those on-ramps for people to participate.
I think that when it comes to our movement, one of the things that we can continue to do is harness the energy of America Talks and National Week of Conversation and remind people that this event happens 24/7, 365. It happens year round, and it's not confined to 1 week.
As a coalition or a field, we can focus on harnessing the energy that we create around National Week of Conversation to remind people that this work goes on all year, 24/7, 365 days a year.
And when it comes to our field, I think that we can do more with a rising tide lifts all boats, and being able to support each other year round and link in together for opportunities, as opposed to just doing it during one specific time.
As a field, we can do more to support each other because a rising tide lifts all boats, and we can extend that support for one another as a field or as a coalition, not only during National Week of Conversation, but throughout the year.
This experience of being in an empathy circle is very different for me. And so it's not something that I've ever done before, and it's very different. So that's kind of what I'm experiencing at this moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the very fact of being in an empathy circle like this is new for you. And so that's a part of what you're experiencing, I guess, to the question of whatever is alive for you at the moment.
That's definitely very true. And I think one of the things that's really exciting about empathy circles or theater or different ways of listening and understanding is that it can appeal to different people on their journey, no matter where they are in their journey.
Mm-hmm. So having these different modes of conversation or dialogue, empathy circles, theater can catch different people who are interested in participating in those different modes or different ways.
I think I feel fully heard. And I think that Kristen has captured that really well. So I don't have anything to add at this time. And thank you for that, Kristen.
All right. Cambria feels fully heard. I guess that's great. That would put me in the speaker role now. And I don't know, Edwin, if you're participating or not, or should I go to?
I am a participant.
Okay. You want to be my listener?
Yes.
My active listener? Okay. Let's see. I'll start where Cambria finished. So for me, part of what is alive at the moment in response to that question is that I come into this with curiosity about empathy circles. Edwin, I've meant to participate in one for a long time. So this really provided a timely opportunity to get a direct hands-on experience of an empathy circle in this particular mode. And I also want to apologize because I only found out about or saw the invitation to this event today. And that's why I have this conflict. I moved 2 things in order to do this, but I can't move the second hour. I'm really sorry about that. I don't mean to disrupt or curtail the experience because I'd like to have it from beginning to end. So I wanted to say that too.
Yeah, so you're curious about the empathy circle process. Sounds like you're glad that you could take part because you've been seeing it before, and apologizing that you didn't realize it was a longer event. You'd move some events and you just can't move this other one, so you're going to have to go in a few minutes.
Yeah, that's right, Edwin. Thank you. Moving to National Week of Conversation. The NWOC week, not only this year and prior years, provides me with a concentrated opportunity to test and validate different theories of change about what it will take to achieve the twin goals that I believe are paramount for having an impact at scale in this country, one of which is reaching as many folks as we can. And the other is that in pursuing that reach, that we maintain diversity and balance along whatever diversity lines are critical to repairing divides in our country. So it's just a concentrated opportunity during all the run up to America Talks and NWOC, and then in the aftermath to reflect on how do we reach people at scale, and how do we maintain diversity in the conversations that we're trying to have?
So this is a real good test for you, but it's very concentrated. You can test some ideas. One is how to increase the reach, and the other is how to maintain diversity. So you're able to sort of test those questions.
Yeah, and there's one other specific question that is always top of mind for me, or a dichotomy that I'm interested in exploring, which is what I would call business to consumer versus business to business, and the efficacy of outreach models where an organization, any organization, is reaching out to individual Americans and appealing them to participate in empathetic or dialogue-based or bridge building experiences, versus this other mode, which is more business to business, meaning working through institutions that people trust or participate in rather than trying to go to them individually and directly.
So you have two different approaches that you see. It sounds like you're testing or sort of exploring those models. One is that you, as an organization, you reach out to the public. How do you reach out, go direct to the public? And the other is working through organizations. Maybe they do the outreach, but you're doing the kind of reaching out to the organizations, working with them, business to business.
Yeah, that's right. And I guess maybe the last thing that I'll raise in coming out of National Week of Conversation and America Talks is that I continue to believe that this broad-based, concentrated week of activities is a really important part of the mix for all kinds of reasons, both for outreach and awareness to the American public, but also for community building and relationship building within our coalition. And I continue to see ways in which we need to keep tightening and refining the flywheel to make this collaborative work more effective in terms of achieving reach and scale. And I'll let you do that. And then I have one last thought after that. Yeah.
Okay, so you see this, having this event is good for the outreach, but you want to keep refining it and improving it and sort of to scale up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the last thing I wanted to say quickly is just that the thing that makes me keep believing in it is the testimonials. We collect a lot of testimonials, including videos after these events. And every time we do that, and every time I have a chance to watch those, it galvanizes me because, you know, as I think it was Cheryl who was saying it earlier, there is demand for this. It may only be a subset of our population that actively needs and demands this right now, but when they speak to how it helps them, it's incredibly moving and keeps me going.
So what you get your energy and motivation and you get moved by is the testimonials that happen at these events. And maybe it's just a small group that this really speaks to, but it does keep you going, hearing what the participants are saying.
Thanks.
Sounds like you heard. I think that was the time too. So I speak to Kara.
Listening.
Yeah. Well, we did 5 events, as I mentioned before, and the biggest one was a Police to Peace group. It was called Talk with Cops.
You did 5 events, and biggest one was Talk to Cops.
Mm-hmm. And we had, I think, over 70 participants. And it was police, you know, from around the country, and you know, just citizens around the country. And it's the same way as Kristen is saying. At the end, you hear these like, "Oh, this is so good," you know, and this positive. And I sometimes wonder, it's like, if it's so good, how come more people aren't doing it? It's like, I mean, it's really great testimonials, you know, but if there's something about people, I don't have time or whatever, you know, or something.
So you had 70 participants and amazing reviews at the end, testimonials of praise and excitement. And yet, life seems to keep people away from coming to these events.
Yeah. It's something about, you know, it takes time, you know, dialogue really takes time, and you got to put in, I mean, here it's like, you know, we're doing 2 hours, and really I find it's like takes about 2 hours to really, you know, get deeper. And you know, that, you know, people are busy, they got things, they got tasks, and they got to go do stuff. And, you know, yeah, so that's an issue.
Communication, relationships take time and effort. And everyone's got life going on. And these 2-hour sessions, while coming with amazing testimonials, take time.
Yeah, but I think it's like exercise. I don't think people appreciate it. It's like exercise, right? Like exercise takes time. And it's like, you know, and it's not like, hey, you exercise one day and then for the rest of your life, you're good. It's like, hey, it's like every week, you know, every day or whatever, you got to put that exercise. I don't think people value it. It's like, it's kind of like, it's when they're about to have their heart attack or they had the first heart attack, then it's like, maybe I better do exercise, you know?
hear that I hear some frustration that, and these aren't your words, but instant gratification that people want one empathy circle to fix it all. And it takes time and it takes work and it's like exercise and you have to keep doing it. And what you've noticed is until there is some impactful personal experience, they're not putting the work in.
Yeah, one thing I'm thinking is maybe we need something that's more kind of a street level, like Occupy Wall Street. It's like Occupy Dialogue, where we go and we take tents and we camp out in front of the Capitol and say, we want dialogue between Republicans and Democrats, and we're not leaving here until, you have it, and we do dialogue, in the tent, so that it's something that's out in the public versus, just these little dialogues. I don't think it's catching enough attention.
So I hear you want more. You want some feet on the ground, big splash, like an Occupy Wall Street, but empathy style.
Mm-hmm. Because we have an empathy tent that we take out to these left-right, street fights, and that's what gets media. The media is all over those. We take the empathy tent to those, and that's where we've gotten the most media. We've got maybe 20 articles about the empathy tent in the middle of this, chaos. And it's like, that's what the media wants. And then they'll write something about it. So we've even been on Fox and Friends, Fox even mentioned it. Breitbart wrote about it, but it's because you're out in the, in the middle of things. So I think that an Occupy, the Capitol, with empathy circles or something is, a way to get attention. You got to put maybe people want to see that you're putting something on the line, it's like they need martyrs or something.
I know that you have noticed that the biggest impacts you get is when you go put that empathy circle in the middle of a hot spot that is full of contention, and you're right there. And then you get noticed by all the different medias on both sides. And maybe that's really what needs to happen, is that this needs to go and we need to put it on the line and put it out there.
I feel very heard. Thank you.
Oh, it's my turn. Okay. Dwayne, you haven't listened. Well, you're facilitating. I'll give you a break around. Cambria, will you be my listener?
Is it a new question round at this point, or just from a...
At this point, as always, we can focus on the main question, or you can talk about what's ever alive for you. And so feel free to speak to what's alive for you at the moment.
So it's continuing to go around on the same topic. I got it. Thank you. This is where I'm so sorry. I need to take my leave. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Bye, Kristen.
Bye.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
And just a quick clarification. Oh, it's the same topic, but because we're speaking about whatever's alive for us, it could be anything. So.
And then can I just make sure if your name is pronounced Kara or Kara before we start?
Kara.
Kara.
Take Kara things.
Perfect. Kara. Wonderful. Thank you. I'm happy to be your listener, Kara.
Thank you. Okay. So what all of that brought up for me, I think the thing that stands out is, in my experience, this is a huge movement. And the reason it doesn't feel like an NRA or what was that? The church that goes and protests things that are like super up in your face about stuff, is because this is not an in your face movement. This is a foundational core humanity movement.
So the movement that we're a part of is actually a really huge movement, but it's not necessarily an in-your-face movement like the NRA, or I believe Westboro Baptist was the church that you were mentioning, and how instead it's this foundational humility movement, and it has a large number of participants, but doesn't necessarily have that press or in-your-face presence.
Yeah, and it's under the bigger emotional intelligence umbrella, which is really like only 30 years in its social. I mean, obviously, we all know about it. It's been around for a long time, but it only came into mainstream almost 30 years ago. I mean, so it's pretty new.
So emotional intelligence as we know it today has only been talked about for around 30 years. And that's where this movement sits. Even though emotional intelligence has existed for a long time, our terminology to understand this type of movement and humility has really only come about pretty recently.
Yeah.
Oh, what do you hear, Edwin?
Do you want to join another group where there's more people?
Yeah, we were just saying that whether or not we should join the main room, leave this room and join.
Yeah, you could join us since there's just two of you.
Okay.
All
We
you
were
do
just
is hit the
remarking
leave.
on the fact that oh, sorry. We were just remarking on the fact that we forgot to, or Larry forgot to like record the room. And
Oh, that's okay. Don't worry about it.
But it was
So
really
just,
great.
yeah, just hit the leave if you want to join the main room. We have a group of 4 or 5 there.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Edwin.
Forbes, I'm just gonna keep dropping facts. Forbes says that emotional intelligence is going to see a business increase 6% over the next couple of years, which is
So in the next 6 years, emotional intelligence, sorry, I missed it. I would love to rehear your perspective.
Next 2 years, a 6% increase in business expectations for emotional intelligence.
So in the next 2 years, according to Forbes, there's going to be a 6% business increase related to emotional intelligence. And that ties in with our broader movement as a whole.
Yes, it is the empathy thing. It is that ability to be human in front of other humans and accept their humanness.
The ability to be human in front of other humans and to feel seen and heard as fellow humans is really powerful. And it's something that emotional intelligence takes into account, and it can be transformational.
Yes. And it is frustrating because it's 30 years and I'd like to be 30 years further than where we already are. But also, that's a big lot of movement in just 30 years.
Emotional intelligence has seen a huge leap forward in the past 30 years. And while we definitely want to be 30 years further on the spectrum, to be able to look retroactively back and see how far we've come in a relatively short time period is still something that's worth mentioning and worth paying attention to.
In these circles specifically, this ability to be empathetic, to hear and repeat and reflect without putting your own stuff into it, I mean, as much as we can as humans, it is a skill that is no longer just something people want, but businesses are craving it. Government is craving it. Thank you, Edwin. And the world wants it heard.
And so the ability to participate in something like an empathy circle, it's not only these soft skills of being able to talk with one another, but being able to repeat back and listen and hear without incorporating your own full opinion into it is something that has a real value, not just for human connection, but it's something that businesses want, it's something that governments want, and it's something that has a real impact.
I feel fully heard. Thank you, Cambria.
I just wanted to mention the other group. It sounds like other people had to leave, so Larry and Valerie were there by themselves. So we brought them into this group. Maybe we can do 4-minute turns, so we can. It'll be a little bit more time for everyone can be more included. So just giving you context. Yep.
And Cambria, of course, you could ask anyone to be your listener, but I would encourage you to ask either Larry or Valerie.
Larry, would you be willing to be my listener?
Absolutely, Cambria.
Thank you. So what kind of arose for me during our conversations was the language that we talk about in terms of recruitment, of how do we appeal to multiple people and encourage them to join this type of movement.
So Cambria, I'm hearing you say that what arose or what revealed during the conversation was, what kind of language do we use to kind of recruit other people to kind of share this experience? What do we say? What kind of language do we use to invite others that can be successful?
And what Kara mentioned about human connection really stood out to me, because as we were talking about studies, it is difficult to recruit people to have a conversation with someone that is different than them. They feel like it's going to be stressful, and a lot of people opt out before there's even an opportunity.
And what Kara was sharing earlier is that it's not easy when people automatically, or maybe you didn't say that word, but when people know they have a different stance or point of view or there's a polarization. When people realize that, it's not easy to bring them into a conversation.
And I think when you approach with empathy, which is what Kara was talking about, it can transform the types of conversations that you can have.
And so, Cambria, I'm hearing you say that when the empathic or empathy approach is authentic, it changes everything. There's an opportunity that's more inviting. You didn't say those words, but I think that's the essence of what you're saying.
And I think for me, it's a challenge to get people in the room to have these types of conversations, because if they're in the room, you can feel the transformative impact. But I'm still struggling to find out, how do you get people to want to be in the room who may not know about the movement or may automatically put up walls?
So, Cambria, I'm hearing you say that once you have people in the room and get into the experience, they begin to feel the transformative effect. They begin to recognize there is value here. But while they're outside the room and maybe they're hearing about it, but they quickly have their own bias about how they already know it, so they don't need to kind of sample it or taste this water, because they have their preconceived point of view. And that becomes a block to putting a toe in the water and trying it out themselves.
And we did test a lot of language to try and get people to show up for these types of events. And empathy wasn't one of the specific things we tested in this round we did previously. But we found out that a sense of belonging is something that really encouraged people to participate. So really leaning into language around belonging and providing an opportunity to belong, I think can be very transformational.
So, Cambria, I hear you saying that you did test out different language approaches for addressing this, how to get people interested and signing up or participating in an empathy event. The word empathy was not used in the approach. However, the kind of essence or core of empathy, the sense of belonging, when that was used, when the language of belonging was communicated, people were interested in that.
Thank you, Larry. I feel fully heard.
Thank you, Cambria. So, Valerie, will you be my listener?
Yes, Larry, I'd be very happy to.
I was just so enjoying what Cambria was sharing, because I could feel each part of it. I could feel it. It just felt so warm to share that message.
So what I'm hearing is that you really enjoyed what Cambria had to share with you. You could really, really feel it.
Yeah. And I also appreciate the challenge, bridging a political divide that may have even resulted in dividing families throughout the world, probably.
And so you can also appreciate the aspect that political divides are far reaching. They reach into families, family divides.
And without the practice of empathy, it just seems like there's no conventional healing of those relationships.
And so what you're really seeing is that without empathy and without practicing empathy, that you're really seeing that that conventional healing is perhaps really not even possible.
Right, like Cambria was saying, when it's kind of hard to get people in the room, because if you begin to tell them about it, they very quickly decide they already know what that is. They don't need that.
It's like Cambria was expressing, one of the issues or the blocks really is that people who have opposite views automatically, when they are propositioned with going into a space where they're going to be confronted, or they feel they're going to be confronted, that they take the stance that I already know how this is going to go. And so they don't even participate.
Right. And I think when we begin to realize that that happens so frequently, I think for me, it's like surprising to see that a large part of humanity has that way of thinking, of instantly believing they already know what someone else is saying.
So this seems to be, from your perspective, something that is very widespread. So it is pervasive. That it seems that many, if not most people, do have this way of communicating, especially when it comes to differences, that they don't want to go into it because they already feel like they already know how it's going to go.
Right. And I would describe the first phase of this as a cognitive bias that might be unconscious. And then the second phase, which is more tragic, is a cognitive dissonance, which is also probably unconscious.
So what you're expressing is that you see these as cognitive issues. One is the cognitive bias, which is the first step that happens. And the second is the cognitive dissonance that happens. And so the bias kind of sets up this dissonance.
Thank you, Valerie. I feel fully heard. Thank you.
Larry. Okay. Might I ask anyone who hasn't spoken in a while to volunteer? Cheryl?
I'll listen to.
Thank you. Okay. Well, for me, the opportunity to be able to participate in empathy circles during conversation weekend, before and beyond, is just an incredible opportunity.
Sorry. You found that it was an incredible opportunity to participate in National Week of Conversation.
Yes, and also Empathy Circle. Empathy Circle really sort of set the foundation for me, I would say, in terms of embodying how I wanted to go into these types of conversations that are difficult.
And what I heard you say was that Empathy Circle gave you a real foundation into how you wanted to go into these conversations to help you understand, participate.
Yeah, and specifically, I would say that I'm learning more and more about myself through the empathy circle process. So I am becoming more aware of things that about myself that I sort of already knew but wasn't acknowledging.
Yeah. So you found through this empathy circle process that you're also learning more about yourself, things you might have thought were part of yourself, but now you're understanding more deeply or surfaced more fully.
Yeah, they are things that I'm recognizing that I knew about myself, but they were aspects of myself that I wasn't sort of allowing myself to fully acknowledge.
Yeah. So the things that you're learning about yourself were things you did know, you had an inkling of, but you weren't fully acknowledging to yourself. And so you're learning that through this process, which you find some value in.
Oh yes, I feel very safe. I think that's one of the things that's really important to me is that I feel safe. And because I feel safe, I feel I have the room to actually explore those parts of myself that sit in silence.
Yes, that place of safety that you feel through this process has given you more freedom to be able to explore some of those places that you might have hesitated to explore before. That safety is very important to you, and that you found it here in these circles.
Yes, I find that these empathy circles really are who I am. And I feel like it's so natural for me. And that's why I just gravitate so much towards practicing more, learning more, doing more of a deeper dive, because it's so beautiful. It's a really beautiful process.
Yeah, so the empathy circle experience is something you find a lot of beauty in and a lot of value, and it allows you to go more deeply into some of these places. So you have some gratitude about it being in this space.
Yes, exactly. I feel that it is I think I just forgot because I saw the timer. I became nervous. So I have to work on that, because those parts of me that I'm talking about that are in sort of shadows, I guess, not really shadows, but in silent spaces that don't get acknowledged, are slowly getting acknowledged, and my level of anxiety is starting to go down. So I'm just very thankful, and I'll stop there. Thank you, Cheryl.
Yeah, thank you, Valerie. Yeah, Dwayne, will you be my listener?
Yes.
Okay.
Excuse me. Yes.
Well, building, and I'm glad to be in this space because I can see how the deepening and the building of ideas emerge as I listen to others and I listen to myself.
Cheryl, you're glad to be a part of this conversation, this experience, and you see how things are building upon how the different ideas that are being shared, that the different layers that are developing, and we're building on that energy.
Yes. And I'm really grateful for what has been shared by others so that I have a little bit more reflective space myself.
You appreciate what's been shared by others, and it allows you more space and depth for sharing what you'd like to share.
Yes. And to build my curious mind around some of the ideas that we've shared together. So for example, when Kara was talking about emotional intelligence and that becoming more of a recognized, embraced thing. And when Cambria was talking about creating a sense of belonging as we recruit people into this work, I start thinking, and Valerie talking about the safety. So how do we bring those? Yeah. Thank you. Learning to pause too.
You spoke about how there's an opportunity to explore your curious side, and to build on that. And you spoke about Kara sharing and talking about her speaking to emotional intelligence and the importance of that. And then you also mentioned Cambria and what she shared about the challenges of recruiting. And then you also started to talk about what Valerie shared. And if you could elaborate on that, because
Yeah.
I interrupted you. Thanks.
Yeah. And thank you. I'm loving to learn speaking in smaller chunks. And I think about what would it be like to create something in our movement that sort of says, what does belonging to America mean? I belong to America. America belongs to me. What does belonging to America mean?
You wanted to build on more on refer back to what Valerie had spoken about earlier, the sense of belonging and safety. And so you were thinking, like, you're asking the question, what does belonging mean? What does belonging mean in the context of this thing we call America? What does it mean?
Yeah. And how might we create that sense of it, of some of our gatherings being that place of belonging, especially to those who are so busy or afraid.
And you also talked about, how do we create this sense of belonging, this space of belonging in conversations with people generally in America, because of all the different things that people bring to the conversation, some fears and other types of behaviors to the conversation. How do you create that space?
Yeah. And how do we bring it then to a national scale? And thank you. I feel fully heard.
In summary, how do we scale that up or bring it to a national scale? And thank you, Cheryl, for having me as your listener. And let's see. Now it's my turn. I haven't spoken in a while, and I think everybody's gone a couple of rounds. So, Cambria, would you like to be my listener?
I would love to be your listener.
Thank you. As Cheryl mentioned earlier, I also enjoy the process of listening to the different things that people bring to the ideas that people bring to the conversation and building on that.
Similar to what Cheryl talked about, you also enjoy listening to the different ideas and thoughts that come up in these types of conversations.
Yes, and I see a connection with a lot of what was being spoken about earlier. And that connection for me relates to self-esteem and how I show up to a conversation.
You talked about how that connection and the types of things that are brought up kind of tie into self-esteem and how you show up in a conversation as well.
Yes, and that's, for me, that's always my challenge, is how I show up. You know, what type of, I'll stop there.
That's one of the challenges that you see within yourself, is how you show up within a conversation.
Yes, whether it's participating as a part of an activity like this or any conversation, what am I bringing to play when I get involved in the conversation? In short, how am I feeling about myself the moment before the conversation begins?
And how you show up in a conversation is something that plays across all conversations, both in these types of events or when you're having another conversation. It's how you show up, but that's also how are you feeling the moment before a conversation starts, and how are you contributing to that conversation, and how are you bringing that sense of self into the conversation.
Yes, and I think that's a really important, for me, that's a really important element of these types of larger conversations, because I think how I show up is going to impact my participation and even have a synergistic effect on the larger group as well.
And how you show up at a conversation isn't limited just to you. How you show up and participate and how you're feeling impacts not only your own experience, but the synergistic experience of the whole group can be transformed to that.
Yes, and then there's another important thing that I think about all the time, and that's how I use language, and first communicating with myself and communicating with other people.
One of the things you also think about a lot is how you use language, both in communicating with yourself, but also in communicating with other people.
Yes, and so how I communicate with myself is really important to me because it sets the tone for how I experience things, how I experience life itself.
So how you communicate with yourself is incredibly important because it sets the tone of your own experiences and how you experience life itself and how that can be transformed through how you're talking to yourself.
Yes, and I find when I put energy into myself and I work on myself, I feel like I can make a better contribution in any conversation that I participate in.
And to wrap up what you were saying, that language that you are communicating with yourself, and when you're showing up in a conversation as a whole, that can kind of shape and transform the conversation as a whole, even through starting with your own experience.
Yes, thank you, Cambria. I feel fully heard.
And I did see that it's 10 minutes to close. Does that mean you would like to start kind of a debrief, or how would you like to?
I will have a debrief after. So we have in the group, we have maybe time for one or two more rounds, and then we'll go into the main room and debrief there.
So I can go ahead then. Edwin, would you be willing to do my
listening?
So one of the things that really stood out to me, it was when Cheryl was speaking and talking about the question of belonging in America.
So the topic of belonging in America sound like something stood out for you about that.
And one of the questions that Cheryl asked is not only our sense of belonging in America, but our shared ownership over America as well, and what that can mean for an individual.
So it's about our shared ownership of America, not just our belonging, but sort of the shared quality
And I think that one of the terms that came up earlier also from Cheryl was civic courage, and how can we take this idea of a shared patriotism or ownership over our country, no matter our political beliefs, and come together under this concept of a more perfect union.
So you're really seeing how we can come together under this, sense of shared ownership and coming to the vision of a more perfect union.
And I think that it's beautiful to see how people can feel connected, whether it's people's experience of their childhood, whether it's their experience of how they actually, I lost where my thought was going, so you do not need to remember that part. But
you lost your thread where you were going. You forgot kind of where you were going with it, and so yeah.
Exactly. And I think that one of the, there we go. The last thought I was going to say, that I think that something like this, of being able to share it, other people's experiences, can be really transformational, and how it can be unique. That I don't know anyone's political affiliations here, but we are having this shared experience in this moment together.
Yeah, you're feeling the importance of what we're doing here, having these dialogues, because you can really share. You don't know the political, where people are politically, but you have that sense of the felt connection, maybe.
Yeah, and I think that if there's ways to channel people's passions and what they are genuinely excited about, and bring people together for movements and just a moment of wholeness together outside of the political divisiveness, it can be very powerful.
So it's really finding where people's passions are and then bring them together outside of this political realm. That's really powerful, bringing people around together around their passions.
And I think that there's an organization that I found that it's called Common Water as opposed to Common Ground. And it's fly fishermen who are super excited about building common ground together. So just finding ways to harness people's passions as an opportunity for bridging, as opposed to making it feel like homework.
So instead of making bridging like homework, something you really have to work at, you just find topic areas like fly fishing that people are already really excited about, and bring it into those contexts.
Definitely. I think that we all have things that we're really excited about in our own lives, and it's easy to connect on the issues we care about. And it doesn't matter if you're across party lines in that regard.
Yeah, so really find those places where people are really passionate about some topic, and they're going to just forget about their political issues. If you can find those really passionate things people are mutually interested in.
And the last phrase that I'll say before my time is up is how, when you start with those passion areas and find that common ground and then move into politics, it's something that can be really a great pathway forward, because you see each other as the human before you see each other as the party.
So if you have those shared experiences, that shared passion before you go into the politics, then you're going to bring that those feelings in, and maybe it won't feel so divided, partisan.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Edwin. I feel fully heard.
Okay, then I'll speak to Valerie.
Hi, Edwin.
Yeah, one thing I did, we're part of the ListenFirst Coalition, and I just really appreciate what the ListenFirst has done to create this coalition, because you get to, it's all these different organizations coming together and just having sort of an association and a network. I find it's really good to know there's that whole community.
So what I'm hearing is that you're really appreciating that there's this coalition, and that that coalition is part of what organized the National Conversation Week and other things. And so it is really nice to be able to have that in place in terms of building culture of empathy, because it creates in itself a community, and you're seeing that building.
Yeah, it's nice to see when they have the meetings, just like 100 people or more, on the screen. It's like, and they're each from a different organization. It's like, wow, all together, all kind of working on this together. So that's, yeah, it's encouraging.
So you're finding it very encouraging, especially when you see it happening. You see these faces, you see people, like 100 different faces from all different parts. And I'm feeling that you're feeling very encouraged and very motivated by that.
Yeah, you don't feel so alone, right? It's like, oh, it's our little individual organization here out on the ocean. Yeah, there's other boats out here.
Right. So there's a feeling that you're not alone. And so in that, there's like a placement of energy that I'm picking up on in terms of where is my energy being applied. I'm not alone. And this is actually fruitioning.
Yeah, the other thing I was thinking when the topic of belonging came up, I think Cambria was mentioning that, is there could be empathy cafes around topics like belonging. Just let's explore the topic of belonging, have an extensive dialogue. It's a little bit like a focus group, you could record the discussions and you'd sort of see where the energy is, around it. So an empathy circle around a topic like belonging or what do you think? Yeah, could be interesting.
So you're really seeing an opportunity there on the topic of that was sort of using the topic of belonging, for instance, and having groups, focus groups, and using that as a topic idea to see where are people's energy flowing around this particular topic.
Yeah. So let's see what else. I guess it's also thinking about, going forward now that we've done this week of conversation, where do we go from here? It's a lot of work, all the scheduling, all the promotion, I guess we're maybe in a debriefing phase, right? We're here, we're listening to each other, letting things settle, sort of integrate them and see what sort of emerges, for what's next.
Right. So now you're expressing a more state of a debrief, allowing everything to settle, to process, and then to see moving forward what's going to be inspired, what are the next steps, what comes out of all of this.
Yeah, and we have like about less than a minute. I'm going to be closing the rooms. I see Diana Clark joined us. It's almost over. So we're going to just let you know, we've been going for about an hour and a half and more than an hour and a half. I'm going to hit the close all rooms. And so it'll be closing in about 60 seconds.
Okay, so you're just clarifying for everyone that you're going to be closing the room, and you acknowledged that Diana Clark came into the room, and we've been going for a while now, and we're going to be closing soon.
Feel fully
I just need 30 seconds.
We're going to have a 30 seconds debrief, so we we'll call on you for that. Okay.
Hi, everybody. I'm in a school, so I would like to hear what we're going to do with youth, because I work with youth and I only see adults there. So I'm representing all the youth that sometimes we don't have empathy for and we don't listen to. That's all I have to say.
Okay, appreciate that. Thank you.
Can I say I have a program for you, Diana?
Great.
Parents Forum, we have a program for parents, and we have one that's adapted for young people called Spotlight on Conversation.
Great.
So,
I'm glad to hear that.
.org.
Let's get some of those youth together so we can talk. They can talk to each other.
Should I put that in the chat?
Please.
Yeah. And I put also on Thursdays at 10 a.m. Pacific, and also my email, I'm talking about having this process in schools for kids.
Very good.
So if you're interested, you got the information.
I'm just speaking out loud.
Sure.
Okay, so we want to do like a 30-second, just sort of a debrief. We've been in the empathy circle, and I just posted the question. Take about 30 seconds to share, recap your National Week of Conversation experience, any highlights, and or just any comments about the empathy circle. And Bill, would you be willing to call on people?
Sure.
maybe start and then call on the individuals?
Yeah, well, I did participate in the talks with cops, and I spoke with several people from the community, and Wendy, who was a policewoman. And I did have interactions with police in my work. And because it was in a contained, we knew that no one was going to get shot, that it was a very functional relationship. And I think that that's what that's the direction that we need to go, a la community policing and things like that. So it was very interesting. And what the main thing just that Wendy said is she wants to be seen as a total human being, not just a person with a badge and a gun. And there, she has a reality beyond that. And that was the main message that I got there. Okay, so I'll just kind of go around. Cambria?
Definitely. I was not able to participate in an event for National Week of Conversation, but I did a lot of message testing to try and figure out how people could be encouraged to show up for these types of events. And something that came up during those tests, as well as in our empathy circle, was specifically around the concept of belonging and a shared sense of belonging and community, especially during a time when we have felt pulled apart. Many of us haven't seen each other in 2 years, and we've been on Zoom, especially in this space where so many people are remote. So that was just a great experience. And it was my first time doing an empathy circle. So thank you for the opportunity.
Great. Thank you, Cambria. Cheryl?
Yes, I was central in one event during the National Week of Conversation, and participating in another, and then listening in to a third. And I think we had interesting conversations and learning about the role of the media, the sort of messaging of factual, not sharing disinformation. What does free speech mean? So all those things sort of lifted me as people engaged in those. And I think for this, I was glad that we use the empathy circle to really be able to experience the model. And I got some good ideas about how we build on that sense of belonging. And I really appreciate the time with the folks who are listening, and the ability to learn shorter chunks of sharing.
Great. Thank you, Cheryl. And Kara?
Gosh, I just love this stuff. So I didn't get to do any of the events for the conversation week, but I got to do some at home. And this stuff for years has been considered woo-woo, but I gotta tell you, it's becoming mainstream corporate, like big business conversations. This is the direction of humanity, with artificial intelligence coming in as the fourth revolution. This is the work of humanity. This that you are all doing, this is it. And I appreciate you so much for being out there and doing this and bringing this to the world. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Well, thanks for coming, Kara. Thanks for being part of it. Diana?
Well, I did have the opportunity to participate, and it was overwhelming. I got to meet someone who was 100 years old and who had went through everything I had went through, who had been New York. We had been to all of us in the group. We had all been to lived in the same cities. That was pretty amazing. And we talked about our communities, how our community is now, how it was then. And it was just pretty amazing. We were still on the call talking to each other. And somebody sent us a little text and said, I'm getting in my car, I'm going, but y'all can keep talking. We were really having a conversation. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Great. Thanks for sharing, Diana. Eve?
See, good, I'm speaking. Okay. I organized a panel on where parenting education belongs with a parenting educator, a pediatrician, and 2 National Parents Union delegates. And it went mostly as planned. There were some lively moments. And that was the topic that I brought up to the breakout group, but I'm very grateful to be part of this effort and love the chit chat, the side convos, passing notes. Thank you.
Thank you, Eve. Thanks for coming. Marion.
Thank you, Bill. My event was Holy Dialogues, and it was about curious and compassionate conversation around the LGBT and faith divide. And we had a lively group of LGBT folks, parents and pastors, mainly conservative traditional pastors. And what we found towards the end of it was that people who had been really fearful about engaging with the topic, particularly in kind of a public forum, they found that they were very grateful to meet people different from them. And there were tears shed and people saying, well, I'm going to talk to my mom now, I'm going to talk to my child. So it was a really, really valuable experience. And we intend to do it monthly from now on.
Great. Wonderful. Henry.
So I led a meeting of opposites, an introduction to meetings of opposites, which was 2.5 hours. 115 people registered, 47 showed up, and 22 were left at the end. So I thought it was a resounding success. I got through my script, accomplishing the objectives of it, and feel that I have more partners now in accomplishing the goals of the meetings of opposites, which is to replace the mechanism of perception with the possibility of being together.
Great. Well, that sounds great. Thanks for sharing.
Thanks.
And Valerie.
Hi. Yeah, going into I think it was a talk to police, piece to police, something like that. It was very intimidating. And I felt that was the sort of purpose of empathy, bringing empathy in terms of recognizing within yourself why you feel what you feel, whatever it is that you feel, to acknowledge that. And it was just very nice to see that the people that I was participating in on the 2 different days, how much we learned from ourselves and from one another, and how open everyone was. And it was just another really nice experience in this simple but very effective structure of empathy. Thank you.
Thanks, Valerie. Dwayne?
I participated in the Peace to Police event, Police to Peace event. And also I participated in a couple other conversations. For me, it's always interesting, the relationship with police and the community. I experienced a lot of really challenging interactions with the police when I was growing up. However, my father was one of the first African-American law enforcement officers in Harris County, Texas. And so I also had a lot of really good relationships with the police department when I worked for the city of San Jose, and I was involved in neighborhood redevelopment and community. We did a lot of community policing activity, and they contributed a lot of positive things to our community. And so my feeling about the police, I think, is a little bit different, because even though I had some really challenging experiences, I haven't allowed those experiences to shape how I look at police officers. And like everyone else, like everyone else that I interact with, I keep my mind open and let them show me who they are before I, come to any idea about who they are. So the other thing that I would like to really mention is that I think all these events that and organizing and everything are really important. The only question that I asked is, who's not at the table when you're having these conversations about these types of events? Who's not a part of that conversation? And I think it's really important to think about involving some of the people in the conversation for organizing events that you're hoping to reach out to. Thank you.
Thank you, Dwayne. Larry?
Yeah, I've been participating in all of the events that Edwin has been putting together with empathy circles, and I love every one of them. I'm just amazed at what Edwin and the team have put together. This empathy circle is relatively simple to present, to teach, to learn, and incredibly powerful to each one of us, raising our own self-awareness in a safe environment in which a group awareness melts into a oneness. It's just miraculous what this does. So keep on keeping on. Thank you.
Thanks, Larry. And finally, Edwin.
Okay, yeah, I mentioned it in our breakout room, just appreciation for the ListenFirst Coalition. I think there's 400 organizations in the coalition that put on the National Week of Conversation. And it's a lot of work that they're doing, organizing, bringing everybody together, networking. So just an appreciation for that, how they've brought all these groups together and put on an event like National Week of Conversation. And I will post some links here in the chat. So coming up, if you're interested in the empathy circle practice, doing more of it, we have a 5-week training that starts next week, starts next Monday. It's by donation, so basically free, and you're welcome to take part in that. We also have more intro cafes. They're on Friday, Saturday, and this Friday and this Saturday on building the empathy movement. And we just got to practice the empathy circle practice there. And then Bill has a Thursday group for bringing empathy circles into the schools. So I want to bring that practice into the schools. Is there anything you want to say about that, Bill? Or?
Well, just I welcome to find out. I think it's experiential, and I think that for kids, especially kids who are disadvantaged, to have the experience really gives them a context from which to access other sorts of empathic dialogues. And so that's why I think it's so important. I put it into the chat. I'll put it in again once more because why not? And feel free to come, or if you can't come, email me, and I am very dedicated to doing this. And so I'll try to support you in however, if you feel that it's appropriate to, institute it, because I have the several strategies you can use. Thank you.
And I put the link into the overall schedule. There's a link to a Google Calendar with all the different empathy cafes. If anybody wants to hold an empathy cafe, you're welcome to contact me and put it into the calendar just to get the publicity out. And we do have a feedback form. I'm going to put that in there if you're willing to just click on that feedback form. Oops, that didn't work. For some reason, that link does not work. I probably left out a letter, or I did. I left out a letter. Let me put that in again. Yep, left out the V at the end. So if you click on that last link, it'll bring up the, just some feedback. If you'd like to leave us some notes about how the Empathy Cafe was today, appreciate that. And I think that's it. Anything else? Any last comment from one of the facilitators? Thanks to our facilitators, Dwayne, Larry, and Bill, for holding the rooms. Appreciate that. And I guess that's it then. So we end with, you had something, Henry?
My standard.
What is that? You weren't coming through.
I put my standard message in the chat for anybody that's interested in finding out more.
Okay, great. Then jazz hands, goodbye until next time. We'll be holding more of these. So goodbye for now.
Be safe.
Hi, everybody.
Take care. Thank you all.
Good to see you all. Okay, oops, let's stop the recording. If